Greetings, welcome to another Deckard Games YouTube thing. Now that Samurai Shodown is getting revamped, the time has come for me to review the one that I've played the most, and that is the Mega Drive version, or Genesis if you live in America. When conversations about fighting games were a thing because those games were awesome and drove you to spend lots and lots of money on arcade machines, most of those conversations went around games like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. When companies were improving on the fighting game formula but not changing it that much, in 1993 SNK does it with a new title, Samurai Shodown. Developed and published by SNK, Samurai Shodown is a competitive fighting game, but when other games focused mainly on hand-to-hand combat, Samurai Shodown introduces weapons to the fighting mechanism. The game takes place in feudal Japan in the 18th century and follows the story of a group of fighters trying to defeat the resurrected Amakusa. There are 11 characters to choose from, all with their unique fighting style and skills. And while not being a huge fan of fighting games, but being fascinated by Japanese history and culture since ever, for various personal reasons, I had to try Samurai Shodown, and man, I was not disappointed. Samurai Shodown starts off with a SEGA logo with some petals falling down, followed by a screen that lets you know that a samurai fears nothing, struggles to triumph over evil, and lives for one purpose, to destroy all enemies. After that, we are presented with the main menu that presents some main options: Game Start to start a new game, Versus Mode to go one-on-one with another human being by your side if you happen to find one, and Option that should really be in plural because there is more than one option to mess with, like the difficulty, combat time, items, button configuration, and testing sounds. So let's dive into Game Start, which is the story mode of the game. And the first thing to do is to choose a fighter, of course, and as previously mentioned, there are 11 to choose from, all with different styles and techniques. I would say that is a pretty decent roster, with some interesting characters and with some cool details. After choosing the fighter and reading a small text, we're off to the arena to do some arena fighting things. When talking about a arcade conversion, the first thing that comes to mind are, of course, the graphics. While not being arcade perfect, which would be impossible due to hardware limitations, the graphics are pretty detailed. The characters are quite well designed and look really cool with some great sprite details and use of color. Characters are big and detailed, movement is fluid apart from the occasional slowdown, and with some great animations unique to each character. One other cool thing is that the blood is there. During the fight, when your blade goes through your opponent's squishy body, you can see the blood splattering all over the place, and the same happening to you. Adding to these two are the stages where the fighting takes place. As I've mentioned, the game takes place in feudal Japan, so all the stages have that ancient Japan theme to them. I would say that the stages are exceptional, lots of detail, and some great use of light and shadows, from moving water to moving characters and animals in the back, to the inclusion of some sort of referee that is present in all fights, signaling every hit that the fighter takes, just like in a real-life fight. You get a sense of really being in ancient Japan, participating in a fighting tournament, and helping to this matter is another thing that we'll talk in a couple of minutes. In the sound department, the game is okay. It is not exceptional, just okay. During the fights there are lots and lots of screaming and screeching in pain from the fighters. There are also a few metal on metal sounds that I think are awesome, and some voices from the referee and the fighters themselves, although these sounds are quite muffled. As for the music, again, it's feudal Japan. There isn't a ton of variety in music. It tries to be faithful to the time period where the game takes place, and it's pretty much it. So expect some simplistic music and not more. I would say that the sound effects are way better than the music within the game. Being a game from SNK, one would expect the game to have some really nice controls, and this is both right and wrong. If you are using the standard 3-button Mega Drive controller, I would say that the game is practically unplayable. In fact, it clearly states at the back that you should use the 6-button controller. And with this last one, things are totally different. Controls are tight and responsive, with each button performing a single attack, this meaning that there is no need for button combinations. The attacks are very simple: weak, medium, and strong, with the A, B, and C buttons being physical moves and X, Y, and Z being sword moves. So if you want the full experience, please play Samurai Shodown with a 6-button Mega Drive/Genesis controller. And now for the most important thing about Samurai Shodown, the gameplay. Unlike other fighting games from that time, Samurai Shodown focuses on armed combat, mainly with swords and other cutting similar things. Not only that, the game, at least for me, is not a full-on assault on your opponent, but rather a sword fight. This means a much slower and well-thought fighting mechanism. Imagine two guys with swords, studying each other's moves, waiting to make a move and inflict some damage to the opponent. I find Samurai Shodown to be way more technical than other fighting games. And by technical I don't mean the agility of pulling out moves and stuff. I mean the technical aspect of looking at your opponent and his moves and know when to defend and when to attack. It is a methodical kind of fighting that I think it resembles more with a real sword combat. Don't expect to button mash your way through the game. Don't expect to use special moves over and over and win. This is not that kind of game. Each fighter has a limited number of regular and special moves, and the game emphasis is on the timing to put those moves into action. This is a patience kind of game. To know the moves that you can pull off and know your opponent is mandatory. And quoting Sun Tzu, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. It's all about strategy and timing. A well-timed regular move is way more effective than spamming special moves all over the arena. Take your time, watch, learn, then attack. Like a real samurai, one well-placed blow can be fatal. One final thing that I would like to talk about is the presentation. While lacking a few things from the arcade original, the presentation is pure class. From the minimalistic presentation screen, the colorful main screen, the very little lines of text from the fighters, the fighter selection screen, the pre-combat ritual, everything, and I mean everything, shows class. I guess sometimes going minimalistic is the way to go when things are done right. There is a sense of coherency from start to finish, of balance, which I guess it goes well with the feudal Japan theme. Samurai Shodown is not a perfect game, if there is such a thing, but is a very well made one that would come to inspire other games to take a similar approach. So would I recommend Samurai Shodown? Of course. Back in the day, it was a breath of fresh air to the fighting game genre, and where others were just improving on the same formula, SNK and Samurai Shodown changed that formula, and that takes balls. As long as you're still there, feel free to check my other videos. I cover a lot of different things, from reviews, history videos, making repros to building old PCs. Click that subscribe button and leave a like in this video, because that would be very much appreciated. You can also follow me on the various social media networks that exist on this thing called the internet. As always, thank you very much for watching this. Until my next video, take care.